If you've been following the Twitter sphere and the social medias, you will notice there is a big controversy erupting around the X-Men comic books. At the end of the comic book, you will actually not get the final page of the book with information relating to the title and key elements in there. You'll actually get a QR code. And when you get the QR code, you're supposed to scan it with your phone and read a comic book page on a little smartphone, which does not work. Hopefully you actually have a tablet that you can see it on, because that's almost the size of a comic book page. Unfortunately, if you're reading your comic book digitally on a tablet, you're probably going to have to do it with a phone. Or maybe you take a picture of it with your phone, and then you bring it up with the phone, and then you use the tablet to scan it, and then you can see the final page on your tablet and actually be able to read it. I don't know what Marvel were thinking. They're making a lot of excuses for this, and it even sounds like this probably won't be continue on for much longer. Although there was certainly a lot of scuttlebutt out there. The water cooler was talking about how this wasn't just going to be an X-Men thing. This was going to be a Marvel Comics thing, a new gimmick that they were going to implement, where the final page of the comic book, the cliffhanger normally, or the thing that tease you for the next issue to keep you coming back for more, would no longer actually be in the book. It would be a QR code that you had to scan with. I guess the idea being that you could interact with the comic book differently and have a different experience. Although if you listen to Marvel Comics, Tom Brevoort especially, that is not why they did it. They actually want to discourage spoilers or something like that. And a lot of people were very, very upset with this because it's not exactly what Marvel said that they were doing. And I think this kind of blew up in their faces. It's all anyone was talking about rather than all the stuff coming out at San Diego Comic-Con, which I will be covering right here over the next week. In fact, there's probably already a video out about at least one of those topics. And I think I'm going to get 3 Marvel videos out of that. Let's hear from Tom Brevoort and talk about all this controversy and how they could have avoided it very, very easily. Marvel Comics executive editor Tom Brevoort confirmed the X-Men line will continue to hide their last page behind a QR code for the foreseeable future. When a fan addressed why they disliked the QR codes on his Man with a Hat newsletter, Brevoort asserted, "I think that's fair, but in this era of early spoilers, I love this approach. Gives us the opportunity to hold on to some plot points right up until the day the title ships, so you'll see the pattern repeated in most of the other X launches of this era. We will include those pages in the eventual collected editions, though, for those who don't own a phone." I think trying to be funny there at the end, for those of you who don't own a phone, you'll finally get it in the collected editions. And I think that last comment almost shows the hubris of Tom Brevoort not understanding why people are mad. First of all, there's a lot of collectors out there. Who wants to buy a comic book for their collection that's not complete? Like, the last pages that they're showing are actually kind of important plot elements. We'll kind of get to that here in a little bit, but essentially you're missing a page of what you actually paid for, which was definitely going to chap the ass of a lot of collectors out there. And Marvel Comics specifically, leading the way, have been targeting the collector demographic over the reader demographic for several years now. They're certainly their highest priority. And when they came up with this scheme, they should have been able to go, how will collectors respond to this? Are they going to like this? Are they not going to like it? We already saw that they will respond to changing pages in the comic book, and they'll go out and buy a couple copies of it, even if those new pages in the interior variant version of the comic book didn't even actually happen. It's just kind of a fairy tale of what happened. I don't understand how they didn't anticipate removing a page would get the exact opposite response. Not only are you pissing the collectors off, but you're actually pissing off the few readers that you do have left that you're trying to bring back into the X-Men fold by not allowing them to see the final page unless they want to scan it through on their phone and then like pinch and you zoom and you're like, okay, I got one panel or I got a half a panel here. Let's move over. Which one is that silhouette? And it's no fun to read a comic book at all on a mobile phone. The only people that have figured out how to make comic books that fit for mobile phones are in Asia. We certainly haven't figured that out in America. And this was easily avoided. I think they should have told people before X-Men From the Ashes relaunched that, hey, we've got a QR code initiative where we're going to have a bonus page at the end, and you'll need to use your phone, but we recommend you use a tablet. And then also told people this will be part of the collected edition and all that kind of stuff. And that way, people actually had a little bit of information about it, and they wouldn't be going, oh my goodness, is this going to happen to all Marvel comics? Is this going to be in the X-Men forever? Because it was a shot to the system. People weren't used to this happening. A lot of people don't like change. And it certainly pissed a whole lot of people off. I think they should have been more open and transparent about their initiative and saying they're trying to stop spoilers. You can't stop spoilers. You literally cannot stop spoilers. The MCU can't stop spoilers. They have an unlimited budget. You just kind of have to embrace the age of spoilers and hope that that final page, that when people spoil it, it's so awesome people even notice. They're like, wow, I would like to pick up that comic book. I don't think that these pages are quite up there, but certainly they did cause a ruffle. There were some people defending Tom Brevoort. Marvel Comics writer Gail Simone is a staunch supporter of the latest X-Men relaunch's first issue gimmick of hiding both relevant exposition and first character appearances behind QR codes. Taking notice of the Twitter discourse that erupted around the topic earlier this week, the new Uncanny X-Men writer declared, "They're fun. They have little hints of what's coming. They are only in the first issues. Where anyone got the idea that this was forever or that you could never read the last page is baffling." I think the reason that they got this idea is because you didn't tell them it was happening. No one expected it. Nobody really knew what was going on. They just knew that there was a QR code. You scan it. All of a sudden, you've got a little page, and like it appears to be a comic book page. I can't really see it. Oh, there's a silhouette of somebody called the Mattress. I don't remember the name of the 4 things on the first issue there. And they aren't just like fun little like bonus pages or stuff like that. There's a little bit more to them. But I do think that's the major pushback. And I'm a little bit surprised comic book creators aren't there. Comic book creators aren't like staying silent on this one if they weren't going to back the fans, because Gail Simone started as a comic book journalist. A lot of these people did. And they know they would be fucking infuriated if they got a comic book that was incomplete, that had a page that you had to like scan and take a picture, and then you scan it with this device, and maybe the final page finally shows up. But the big problem is these aren't inconsequential pages. These are pages that feature big events, i.e. content that seems extremely important to the plot. In NYX #1, the post-credits picks up with what happened to Fauna. X-Men #1 teased the arrival of a major threat to the X-Men. Phoenix #1 might be the worst of all, as it sets up a major villain. So it wasn't just like little bonus page or hey, look at this, a thing or a collage or something like that. These are the introductions of major villains and events that are going to be driving the plots forward for most of these comic books. Certainly for X-Men #1, where you've got the silhouette with all the dudes there, and certainly for Phoenix, where you have the major villain with the big sword that we haven't seen in like 25 years or whatever. That's major stuff. You want that in your comic book. You know, you want to be able to touch it with your hands. And of course, that was always going to piss off comic book readers because they wanted it in their book. But I don't think this had to be a failure. I don't think this had to be something that got people pissed off. Like, you could have had 4 QR codes in the back of it, and one of them could have been some work in progress. Hey, this is what Ryan Stegman's work looked like if he wasn't putting it all over Twitter or whatever. But you could have seen the roughs and then the pencils and inks and all that kind of stuff. People love that kind of bonus content, and they wouldn't expect it in a #1 issue unless they were paying for some type of like bonus edition with an extra couple of dollars on it. They could have put some work in progress stuff on one of the QR codes. They could have put like a little YouTube interview thing with the creator, really trying to hype up the project, talking about what their inspirations were, where they see the project going forward and all that stuff, and really communicating with the person. You know, we could have got another QR code, you know, with the design elements that they've already released that could really break down new elements they're going to bring to the characters, where this came from and all that kind of stuff. Like, they could have made it work. It could have actually been kind of fun to where you were getting stuff that you would normally expect to pay for, you know, an extra $1 or $2 on top of what you're getting there, but you were getting it digitally. And then people wouldn't feel ripped off. They would feel like you were giving them something that has value to them, because typically you have to pay for it. And in this case, you weren't giving them anything with value on the QR code above what they should have expected in the book itself. No one expects to have to break out their phone and like pinch and zoom to finish their comic book reading experience. You actually detracted from it. You removed something that has always been there. You removed value from the book, but charged the same price. Of course, people are going to be pissed off. All they had to do was think about it, not only from a collector standpoint, but from a reader standpoint, and just general consumer psychology kind of standpoint to realize this probably wasn't going to go over well. And I don't mind the idea of trying to add things to the reading experience and the way that you interact with a comic book. You know, I read most of my stuff digitally anyway, not because I want to. I prefer to just be able to hold them, but because of my location, it's really hard to get my hands on physical copies, you know, certainly in time to do any relevant reviews and stuff like that. But I'm all for innovating and doing new things that could be cool. This isn't innovating. Removing a page of the story to make people go through another hoop just to get at something that they would have expected to be there to begin with isn't innovation. It's infuriating. And it sounds like, according to Rich Johnston, although I haven't heard this from anybody else, that it's likely over. Marvel Comics have heard the feedback from fans. If there ever was the possibility that they would move to this publishing model, well, it is definitely not happening now. Watch it play out for the first wave of launch titles from X-Men from the Ashes, and then never be heard of again, like comics being polybagged with trading cards. It sounds like he was disappointed in that one. No one else has said that. No one else has confirmed it. Tom Revord hasn't said it. Gail Simone hasn't said it. CB Cebulski hasn't said it. He's the freaking EIC. If anybody should be out there talking about this, it should probably be the face of Marvel Comics, the guy that's in charge of everything, but he's conspicuously silent while he's trying to find the world's greatest egg roll instead of doing his job. But nobody else is saying this is over except for Rich Johnston. But certainly Gail Simone did imply that it was only supposed to be the first issue of all the launch titles, so maybe that's what it'll be. When they say first wave, I'm assuming that's the first 12 books that were announced before Psylocke at San Diego Comic-Con, so all the way through, what were the last ones, like Dazzler? I think there was another one out there that I'm forgetting. There's been a lot of really stupid titles out there, but do continue to expect these QR codes in the back of at least #1 issues all the way through the line. That's at least what the plan was initially. And I just think it was so easily avoided if they just thought about it, that you're actually removing something that people should expect at a minimum in their comic book, all the pages to be present. And they weren't additive with anything, so nobody felt like they were getting more than they should have expected. They were just getting less and having their reading enjoyment essentially disturbed by having to pull out their device and stuff like that. So I do think it was a pretty stupid move. You know, it sounds like Rich Johnston was very disappointed. Me personally, I didn't really care that there were QR codes. I just don't. I mean, I read everything digitally. I saw that it was there, but especially for like Phoenix, which I didn't think was great, but it was kind of okay, but definitely NYX. I was just glad the book was over. I'm almost kind of relieved that they spared me from having to read another page of Colin Kelly and Jackson Lansing, because I can tell you right now, after reading X-Men and Phoenix and NYX #1, I had no, motivation to scan that QR code and see what was there. I just didn't care because I was just kind of glad the book was over. I was shocked that Stegman's art looked that bad in X-Men #1, and it's kind of boring, and there's way too much Beast exposition. You know, Phoenix, obviously, we had the art controversy with the swiping. I don't think she understands the Phoenix Force, and then NYX is just a terrible comic book. So that's kind of what's going on there. It didn't really affect me, but I certainly do understand why other people were outraged and pissed off, because you literally were having something that you paid for not presented in the comic book itself, which is bullshit and completely avoidable. You can't stop spoilers. This is the age of spoilers. If people want to avoid spoilers, they avoid them. If they don't mind seeing spoilers, they see them. That is kind of the age that we're living in this new digital social media age where everybody's in contact with each other and everything's being spoiled. Tom Revord, you are not the innovator you thought you were, and this blew up in your face and likely drove away a lot of X-Men fans right from the get-go, which would have happened eventually, because I do not see this going very well. If you would like more conversations about X-Men and all that kind of stuff, and you like the mission that we're trying to do here on YouTube to provide a voice to the fan, to provide a voice of reason to the comic book industry, to point out, hey, this is what's going well, this is what's not going well. And if you want to be a part of that, you go over to Patreon, you support us there, help us with our mission, and we give you awesome podcasts, and we certainly talk about the X-Men quite a bit. If you would like to do that, there's a link in the video description to the Patreon.